Ladies and gentlemen, renegades, rebels, and outlaws, welcome to episode 11 of The Chong Show, live here for the first time in the show's history from Nighthaven, the original capital of the Druids here in Kalimdor. Tonight we have a very special guest on the show, the guardian of Cenarius, Bigdad. For years now, I've wanted to get Big on the show. Finally, the guardian of Cenarius is here, the 9-year veteran, the general, the 6-time champion. Big, welcome to the Chong Show.
Thank you for having me.
So as our first live broadcast here, this will be uploaded on Monday on YouTube. Let's get right into it here, Big. Again, welcome to the Chong Show. Joining our illustrious past members, our past guests in the form of Herlock, Glenn Moreau, and Cathoudis. Now Bigdad, yet another guest on the Chong Show, and Amelia, who is a guest back for the Warcraft review. We are ready to get started, so let's dive right in here. Big, we always ask our guests here, number one, how did you get started into the world of Warcraft?
Well, my son was playing, and I noticed it was pretty cool, and he asked me to try it, and just picked it up. I think it was 2008. It was right after Vanilla and the start of Lich King when we started playing together.
Well, I remember vividly on Mighty Mo, I have the achievement, I believe it was April 15th, 2009. And the reason I know that is because that June, I got my recruiter friend mount, which is the Zephyra. So that's what got you in. I am guilty of that. For those of you who may not know, Big is my dad in real life. So that's how he got started. Big, on the SNF front, we always ask our guests this as well. Who was your favorite opponent? We'll start with that, and then we'll move on to rivalry and arena. But let's start with opponent. You started SNF the very first season, along with myself. You're one of the last veterans from the very first SNF season in 2012, January 2012. So in every season, you haven't missed one yet. You've been to more Champions Brawls than anybody else. Who's been your favorite opponent over the years? And you can have more than one, obviously. But who's been your favorite opponents?
I would say Glenn Moreau and Sinise.
I'm still salty that I couldn't get the knockout on Bigdad as Sinise. So, anyhow here, moving on. And real quick, are you guys able to hear me?
Yes, but there's an echo.
How about now? Are you able to hear me?
Yes, perfectly.
All right, Big. So in your long SNF career here, spanning back to 2012, you already said your favorite opponents, Glenn Moreau and Sinise. What would be your favorite arena and then your favorite rivalry as well throughout your storied career?
I would have to say Black Rock Mountain is my favorite arena to fight in. And we say the favorite opponent was definitely Sinise, and Glenn Moreau was probably, for Bigdad, Glenn Moreau, the fights that we had down to the final, like I had 1 bar of health left, and I was able to keep myself up against it. He had just an onslaught of animals coming at me.
You two had some good back and forth matchups. I remember across Northrend and throughout the 2015 season. And of course, Glenn Moreau's last SNF fight was right there, Black Rock Mountain. And of course, a statistic for everybody, Bigdad is undefeated at Black Rock Mountain. He has never lost there with the Guardian of Cenarius. So that makes sense. Glenn Moreau, obviously, fantastic rivalry between you two. He said as much when he was on the show. And then Black Rock Mountain, your history there speaks for itself. So your favorite arena, your favorite rivalry, your favorite opponent, and of course, we have the history of you winning 6 championships, 6 titles. Only 3 other fighters have done that: Javar, Foxy Hills, and Sharp Swords. Being in that illustrious group, what title was the most memorable? What title do you remember immediately comes to right to the top of your memory where you can look back and say, that was my favorite title win?
It would have to be the one at Black Rock Mountain against Shinush.
And of course, that was at AFC 2, where Bigdad defeated Shenush 4-3. What a matchup that was. What a series. And that was after Shenush had defeated Foxy at AFC 1. So seemingly unstoppable. Bigdad comes in, wins the war with Moonfire. It was all over the arena. We went all over. It was great. And I could see why that would be your favorite title victory. Bigdad, I mean, it still seems surreal to me that you're finally on the show, because it's almost like, hey, next time on the show we're going to have Bigdad. For a couple episodes I said that, and it just never happened. So finally we are here. We are in the flesh. We are live streaming on Twitch, and you are watching episode 11 of The Chong Show. Now, moving on from the SNF front, Big, we're going to move into a recent happening that was quite sad. It was quite tragic, but nonetheless, we will discuss it here. What is your take on Foxy Hills' departure?
Oh, that was a rough one, because he was not only a good friend of the guild. I mean, he came up with the guild, and he was, good friend, just talking to him about real life stuff. So that was a shocker, but sometimes real life events take a toll on someone, and they choose to, sometimes take it out on the people that stand up for them the most, which happens to be this guild. So it was an unfortunate event. Pretty sad about that one.
Now, you said talking about real life stuff. A little known fact about you. I think most people know that you were in the military, you were in the Army, but a lot of people don't know you have 30 years of experience as a command sergeant major. And I think you don't get credit enough for that. And I think it shows in your leadership through the guild for the past 9 years and your consistency. So just for anybody who might be interested in that aspect, which I think is everybody, including myself, tell us how you got started into the military, what started your career, and your favorite moment as a sergeant major, your favorite memories as you climbed through the ranks.
Geez. I mean, when I left for the military,
Bigdad, of course, starting his career and climbing all the way to command sergeant major in the Army National Guard. Bigdad, are you back?
yes.
Toby, are you unable to hear him as well? I can't hear him.
No, I can hear him.
So I started in 1982.
Can't hear.
Hey now. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Big, we can still not hear you. I don't know if Toby can hear me.
I can hear both of you.
Yeah, I can hear you okay.
Can you hear me, Chong?
Yeah, I can hear you, Toby.
Okay, answer me through text here, guys. Can you guys hear me? And can you hear Big, Toby? Okay, you can hear Big. That's all that matters then. Okay, moving right along here. Some technical difficulties for whatever reason. Discord is acting up for us, but nonetheless, we move on here. So again, Bigdad, a 30-year veteran in the Army, a command sergeant major. Big, go ahead and tell us how you got started in the military and your favorite moment in those 30 years as a sergeant major.
Yeah, I started in the military in 1982. Probably a couple of the key moments were airborne school, jumping out of planes, um, Army Ranger School, and just the camaraderie I built through the years. And then, of course, going up through the ranks and starting the family and having you guys there for some of my promotion ceremonies. It was just a great run and a great group of guys. Still have a lot of comrades, much like this game, with the guild, and it's pretty much the same thing with the military. You just form bonds for life.
And of course, Big, you served as well overseas in Iraq and Afghanistan. Thank you for your service on that front. And I just wanted that to be known to everybody who's watching the interview who might know that you were in the Army, but might not know what you accomplished and how long you were in the military for. So again, thank you for your service on that front.
Thank you.
Big, you have been, and you mentioned there that through the years, forming a lot of camaraderie with the different members and everything. You've been the cornerstone of the guild for nearly a decade now. What's been your secret to staying relevant at the top of your game for so long?
I'm one of those guys that when I travel with my job, I'm a grinder. So I'll just keep grinding a quest and battlegrounds, and it might take me longer because I don't do a lot of arena or anything, but I just try to stay up with it and keep grinding and just keep my gear coming. That's all. It's just steady grinding.
Big, you've mained or played just about every healing class and spec combo, but what's been your favorite through the years?
Definitely Druid and Priest has been my favorite classes.
And of course, Doc Stew was your first healer and your first SNF champion, a disc priest. Also switched to Holy for a while, and then Bigdad came along in 2011. I remember it vividly. Big, you created your druid, you re-rolled. Bigdad, for everybody who might not know this, Bigdad was originally a warrior. When he created Bigdad, when Big created Bigdad, and I created Mighty Mo, and we started leveling, I was a dwarf paladin, and he was a night elf warrior. And now he's a druid. He re-rolled in 2011, and I remember vividly. I believe it was Father's Day 2011. I have a memory like an elephant. But I created Wickham. He created Bigdad. I still have Wickham to this day. And we started leveling, and I think we used the recruit a friend summoning feature to meet up in Elwyn again. I mean, it was just great. Very fond memories of that. But Big and Doc, obviously, your first and your best characters, I would argue. And then, of course, you have Big Stu, Doc Fu, all the others as well. So that's very interesting. You've raided, you've done PvP. What's been your favorite moment as a healer?
I would have to say favorite moment as a healer was definitely the Lich King. When we did that together, we were both, I think we were on Horde. And at that time I had Doc Stew as a troll priest. And you were on, I think you were on Shanish. And I think that was one of my most memorable moments because that was a pain. That was really a tough heal.
Well, you were Doc Stew on Horde for a while. It started as Dwarf, then you faction changed, and we raided together. I was Shanish, you were Doc Stew. We raided for a while. And then the story goes in that situation that basically the guild that Bigdad was a part of was running into a wall progression-wise. I was focusing more on PvP. This is around 2010. And what brought us both back to the Alliance, because we were maining Horde pretty much exclusively. I was pretty much done with Alliance. I had Finley still, but he was on the back burner. And what brought us back to Alliance was the fact that the guild benched Big without even letting him know. That he just came on and they were like, oh, yeah, we're bringing in a new healer. And they didn't even let him know. And then his other guild that he was in, Blood Glory, some of you may remember that on Horde side, was also just a colossal failure. They just kept hitting walls progression wise. His officers left, so on and so forth. So it was just a mess, point being, on Horde. And that led to Warsong Offensive being created because I had just had enough. I was tired of dealing with these guilds. I wanted to run a guild on Horde, just as I ran one on Alliance Revolution, on Alliance side here. And that's how Doc came back to Alliance and how Big Stew and Warsong Offensive and all that came about on the Horde side. So we raided together. We downed Ice Crown. Do you remember? Because it was a very memorable moment when we downed Lich King on Heroic. You remember when Alliance Revolution did that? It was our very first raid. We had guys like Crawl, Rev Mother. I mean, this was pre Foxy Hills, pre Glen Moreau, pre pretty much everybody that's part of the current roster besides just the two of us. Tell everybody about what you remember from that very first core, because I talk about it. It's legendary amongst our guild members, and I talk about it so fondly. This is the same core that in Cataclysm downed Heroic Bastion Twilight in a single night. And you remember Big, we had Ship, who was a military buddy of yours. What do you remember about that core, and how special of a moment was that when we finally got down Heroic Lich King on Alliance side? Because we did normal Lich King on Horde side, but the first time we killed Heroic Lich King when it was current content was with Alliance Revolution. So what can you tell everybody about that very first core back in 2011?
Yeah, one thing about that core and that raid, I mean, that was a lot of mechanics for Lich King, and everybody knows that did it back in the day. And I mean, everything had to work perfectly. And I think like there was no way someone could die and then someone could pick him up. You had to win it as a group. And just the fact that we were able to get in there and get it done was that was incredible.
Absolutely. And this was the core group that had sharp swords. Knuckle Duster was angry, for those of you that are familiar with the guild's history. So, yeah, I agree, Big. And really on Heroic, which is what we were doing it on Heroic 10 man, you couldn't have any mistakes. You couldn't. You literally, there was no room for error. If one person screwed up or stepped out of line, or the tank dropped aggro, or someone stood in defile, or got carried off, that was it. It was done. It was a wipe. So we've looked to the past. Obviously, those were good times. And again, it's great to have you on the show here at long last, the guardian of Cenarius here on the Chong Show. Let's talk about the future of the rising new bloods, Reese Puff, Acrebus, Celeste, Enderstone, and so forth. Who do you feel has the most potential in the new year and beyond? Reese Puff, Celeste, Enderstone, Acrebus, all those new guys that are on the rise right now. Who do you think has the most potential to be the next Mega Toby / Amelia, to be the next Smokey the Bear, to be the next so on and so forth?
I definitely think Celeste has a ton of talent, but I think Enderstone reminds me the most of like where Toby, where he's loyal, he's constantly doing things, and he's constantly there when you need him.
And what about Reese Puff and Acrebus? What do you expect from them heading forward?
I mean, Acrebus, I can't wait till he gets back. He's a great guild member, but you never know. You got to give him some time to, acclimate to get back into the game slowly. Reese Puff, I don't know her that well. I think she does a fine job with all the things she's done with us so far. I hope she keeps it up with us. She's got a lot of history from her previous WoW experience too.
That's right, and we will have Racy Puff on the show at some point in the future, talking about Envy, Psycho, and all the old Horde PvP battles against TBI back in the glory days of WOAR World PvP. That will be a walk down memory lane as well. Big, what would you still like to accomplish in AFC and SNF? You've pretty much done it all. You fought everybody from every era, sharp swords, Foxy. When you talk about the greatest of all time, I think you first have to answer, what does that mean? And to me, it means someone who has fought and can fight someone from any era and come out on top. And I think when you look at that, you talk about Javar, you talk about Foxy in his prime, you talk about Bigdad. Those are fighters that could step in any era and win against any fighter. So that said, Bigdad obviously being one of the greatest of all time, what's left for you to accomplish, and on what character would you like to do it as?
I would like to win a championship as just DPS, and that's why I just rolled a paladin, Iron Templar, and I'm trying to work him up through Sunday night fights and get my wins that way.
On the AFC front, what opponents, besides McGregor and Pathador, would you like to fight in 2018?
Well, I'd like another shot at Amelia with Irons or Big Stu, because we had a really good matchup the one time for a championship. Other than that, never fought. I don't think I fought Enderstone once, but I never fought him with Big Dad. And there's a couple other guys I wouldn't mind fighting. Acrebus, we never got that fight together. So when he gets back. Other than that, I would like to crush McGregor one last time.
Well, there's also the added backdrop, I guess, to Acrebus versus Big Dad and Marines versus Army. So there you go. That's a fight I'd like to see as well. But I'd like to see Acrebus fight Big Dad as Frost, because I think if he goes blood, it's just going to be you two swinging on each other for 5 minutes. But yeah, I like all those fights. I like the sound of it. So we'll see what we can do heading forward. Big, it's amazing to me. This next question is centered around a stat that's just unbelievable. I mean, you've been general through the reigns of 5 different guild masters. Of those 5 guild masters, of those 5 regimes, Mighty Mo, Chong, Finley, now Javar, and then your own reign, what was your favorite era?
Probably Mists of Pandaria, because that was like a crucial time for the guild. And that would have been Chong, right?
You're probably you're talking about when Siwas came back and we had Cathaldus on the rise. And yeah, that was the very beginning of Chong's reign, yeah.
Yeah, because Cataclysm almost did me in. I was almost ready to hang it up after Cataclysm. It was tough to heal.
Well, Firelands and Cataclysm ruined a lot of guilds, specifically Stormwind Raiders. Herlock's guild, that broke apart because of the frustration. A lot of the content was very hard and caused a lot of guilds to break apart.
Yeah, I remember you would do those runs for gear, and I went on a couple with his guild, and it was just a rage fest, and it wasn't fun anymore, to be honest with you. And healing, they nerfed all the healing so much that even just the raid content we were trying to do, I just felt like I didn't have it anymore.
Well, I actually had a falling out with Herlock, and I've had 2 big falling outs with Herlock. One of them was in Silvermoon. Now, granted, I was 14, 15 at this time. I was a kid. But this one in particular, I remember, this was towards the end of Stormwind Raiders, like before it really broke apart. And they were wiping on Nefarian. We brought in Doc Stew, and I felt that Herlock was being a little unfair with the criticism against Doc, who had just joined, when there were other people that were making errors in the group. So I left the guild after that. We brought back Alliance Revolution. I got leadership back from Dwarf Spartan, and the rest is history. So the point of these stories that I'm telling you guys here, I want to paint the narrative. The reason that Alliance Revolution came back in 2011, the reason that Warsong Offensive was formed, is because Big and I, through the years, have been in parts of numerous guilds. We've been parts of numerous guilds that we've seen things that, man, I really don't like that, or man, I wish this was different, or man, I wish I could change that. And that's why Alliance Revolution and Warsong Offensive are so great, I think. And of course, I'm biased, but we've taken the best parts of the guilds we've been in and incorporated them into our own leadership philosophy. So that's the point I'm getting at here. Alliance Revolution, Warsong Offensive, they're the best parts of all the other guilds that have been on the server throughout the year, all combined into one. And I think you have to do that if you want to have a successful guild. You have to really learn what works, what doesn't work, and incorporate it into your own strategy, whether for recruitment, PVE progression, whatever. So that's the point behind these stories that we're telling you guys, and what we're trying to get out here walking down memory lane is to show you really how Alliance Revolution returned after I stepped down as GM in 2010 to go Horde, and how Warsong Offensive was born on the Horde side. So that'll do it as far as the favorite era. What would be your favorite expansion, Big? I don't think we've ever talked about that.
Definitely the first one, the Lich. I liked the Lich King a lot, and then actually this one in Legion. I don't like the garrison. Kind of separates people, but I like the sending followers on missions and doing that kind of stuff. So that kind of got us back into the game, or me at least.
You're talking about the class order halls in Legion.
Right. And I think you could get there and you could kind of just rogue and stay in your garrison. But if you did it right, like we did, you could still go out and have a lot of fun, but you had a place to go hang your hat at night.
Right, exactly. Well, I think what saved Warlords of Draenor for the guild was SNF, because we would go and raid, right? And then we'd go back to our garrisons. But every Sunday, we'd go out into the world and we'd have Sunday night fights. And I think that saved Warlords of Draenor for a lot of people that otherwise would have just been sitting in their garrison with nothing to do. So that's interesting. So again, you said Wrath of the Lich King and Legion, right? The current expansion.
Right.
Absolutely. I can agree with that. I think it's, Wrath and then pretty much Burning Crusade, Legion, Miss. Depending on what flavor you like, those three are all tied for number 2. So, Big, this is going to be a walk through memory lane for you. This is going to be a delving into the past. What was the first video game you ever played?
No, I'd rather not say.
Well, while Big thinks about that, I can remember the first video game I played was Sonic the Hedgehog on Sega. And I remember Big used to play. He'd come home from work, play for a little bit, and he would let me play Sonic, and I'd always, run off the cliff and die. I think I was 4 or 5, whatever. And Mortal Kombat, I thought it was the coolest thing when he would turn the blood feature on, in Mortal Kombat. I remember that vividly. And then Spyro the Dragon was my first game on PS1. So Big really got me into video games. I took up the gaming mantle and he showed me the ropes. So that said, Big, what was it? Mario? Was it Nintendo 64? I mean, we're going back. Atari? Let's go all the way back here. Come on now. Show your age.
Yeah, it was Atari. I mean, starting out, my sister and my brother-in-law had it, and we would play that, and that was just basically, DOS screen tennis with 2 lines and a ball. But yeah, coming up through, I mean, Nintendo, the the football game on Nintendo, the ice hockey, and mainly the gaming was, you could play spades, you could play cards, hearts, pinochle. But then when the gaming came out, it was a way for soldiers to kill time while they were waiting for the next mission. And that's when I started gaming, and then it just carried on from there.
So that's interesting. I remember that. I remember I used to go to Mimi's, to my grandmother's, to your mom's, and she had. I remember my cousins playing ping pong, like with the old equipment that was still there. I mean, I remember that, and Sega and Nintendo and all that good stuff. So it's interesting. Big is an OG as far as gaming goes. He's been through it all, and I just wanted to see, hey, what was your first game? What was your first gaming experience? So looking forward, as has been the narrative throughout the show, we look back and we look forward. Thoughts on Battle for Azeroth? What have you heard so far about the expansion? Uh, we have some shows coming up. This next episode coming up, I should remind everybody, episode 12. I'm going to have Enderstone on the show and Toby. We're going to have two guests, and we're going to go through extensively a Battle for Azeroth preview. But Big, what's your thoughts on Battle for Azeroth? What do you think about the new expansion from what you've heard?
I'm pretty excited. I pre-purchased the just the general purchase, and then I'm looking at a couple tunes I might level to 110, or just one, pick one of those. And I did the Horde side, and I did the Alliance. I still have some things to finish up with Big, and it's pretty interesting seeing how they have the War Council set up little headquarters in Orgrimmar and then in Stormwind. So I think it's going to be good.
What's your advice for newer members looking to achieve your longevity and success within the guild?
There's no better place to be a member of than the Alliance Revolution or the Warsong Offensive. We aren't going to mess with you, and all you have to do is chip in every now and then, do some raids, you get promoted, and we treat you like a human being. And anyone that leaves this guild, it's their own fault.
And we have a couple simple rules, right? Respect your fellow guild members. Sign up and show up, and if you can't make it, let an officer know. It's pretty straightforward. So that's pretty much it, right? Follow those rules.
That's it. Rules to live by, and nothing's too hard. All you got to do is show up when you're expected to show up. If you can't show up, tell us why.
Big, what's been your favorite guild event outside of WoW, specifically the ones you participated in? Outlaw Hearthstone, Revolution Football, you are the 2016 Outlaw Hearthstone season champion. So what's been your favorite? The fantasy football, the Outlaw Hearthstone?
Yeah, the Hearthstone was cool. I mean, the cards, the cards that they started coming up with kind of threw me off, but I like playing that game, especially against each other, because when you just play against random opponents, it gets kind of repetitious.
And of course, this upcoming summer, starting in June, we will have the 2018 Outlaw Hearthstone season. Sprite returning for that, Aleth, and Pathador returning as well as Iron Warlord, SGM Stu, Megatobi, all the old veterans as well. That is going to be a very competitive season. Cannot wait for that. I think over the years, we talked about how you've been with the guild since 2009. Who have been your favorite officers over the years? Just your buddies. And, don't be hesitant to say Foxy. Don't be hesitant to say Was. Just who in their prime, when they were on top of it, when they were good, before all the bad stuff happened. Who are your favorite officers? And then, of course, who were your least favorite officers? The ones that you just couldn't stand but tolerated.
No, I'd have to say Foxy, M. Was he was great to hang out with, and we did arenas with Well Dog and stuff like that, and he was a lot of fun. And then ones I couldn't stand were ones kinds I got into it with were, I know Sharp Swords used to wear me out, just as childish behavior sometimes. And other than that, I don't let this game get to me too much. It takes a lot to get me angry at this game, because this is my I do this for fun, and that's why we have this guild.
Absolutely. Great Nick would probably be on that list of people you tolerated, huh, Big?
Yeah, he'd wear you out too.
Oh, man, that was a brutal champions brawl. You made it all the way with Big, and then to lose like that, he walked you off the cliff or whatever, his ghoul knocked you off. I remember that. That was a huge upset. Because I know Glenn and I, Foxy, everybody was rooting for Big to win that. I don't think there was a single person who wanted Great Nick to win. But nonetheless, that's why we have the fights. See who wins. It's not based on popularity. It's based on merit. So, and luck in that situation. Big, as we conclude our interview here on episode 11 of The Chong Show, thank you all for listening to the live interview on Twitch. This will be uploaded on Monday to the YouTube channel, and it is live, so we've had some technical difficulties, all that good stuff, but that's to be expected. It's live. In conclusion, what organizations, charities /charities can people donate to help and support our veterans? You, of all people, should know the legit organizations. A lot of people think Wounded Warriors, they go to the default big organizations, but what organizations can you recommend to our listeners if they'd like to help our returning veterans coming home from the war front who might need the help, might need housing, might need food? Where would our efforts best be served?
Well, I mean, you have the Gary Sinise Foundation. He was Lieutenant Dan, and he probably has one of the best foundations that I've seen. And then I always support the dogs that we use for service dogs. They put them down. They don't bring them back home. So we're fighting right now, and it's called I Heart Dogs, and we help bring those dogs back. And we also help dogs that are in shelters. That Wounded Warrior program's come a long way. They're starting to turn around. I also do Wreaths across America, where they lay a wreath, and they do a lot of other great things for our veterans. But if you just look at your local communities like the Legion, the American Legion, and the VFW, any of those places are pretty legit, and they help veterans out right in your local community. That's what I would recommend.
And those foundations that you mentioned, I will be sure to put links in the description for the YouTube video when it is uploaded on Revolution Radio. Bigdad, the guardian of Cenarius, 6-time champion, and my father, my hero. Thank you for your loyalty and your dedication to the Guild, and most importantly, your service in defending our great country. I have to say, Big, it's been an honor having you as my second in command. It's been a great 9 years. Here's to another 9 years. Thanks for being on the show, Big.
Thanks for having me. Have fun, guys.
Ladies and gentlemen, renegades, rebels, and outlaws, you have been listening to The Chong Show, episode 11, the long-awaited Bigdad interview here on Revolution Radio, streaming live on Twitch. On the next episode, episode 12, we will have Megatobi and Enderstone as guests. We are going to extensively preview Battle for Ezra, talk about each feature, and give our thoughts and opinions on it. Thanks again to Bigdad, the legend, the icon, for joining us here on the show. It has been long overdue here. Episode 12 will be released next week. And until then, we press on. Thanks for listening, everybody.